Lake Macatawa, marked by Boatworks Waterfront Restaurant, the Heinz Pickle Factory, and the once persistent algae blooms. The algae blooms come from increased levels of phosphorus in the water.
So one of the things that has led to the increase in algae and growth and all of that is the increase in phosphorus and nitrogen from runoff.
Phosphorus primarily comes from croplands and pastures, but also bank erosion.
If you put enough sediment and enough nutrients in the lake, that can cause the kind of the balance of the lake to get out of kilter.
This leads to the process of eutrophication, an excess of richness of nutrients in a lake or other body of water, which causes a dense growth of plant life and death of animal life from lack of oxygen.
So the algae takes off. It loves the phosphorus and the nitrogen that's being added, and so it grows like crazy and kind of takes over and dominates the ecosystem. It dies, and then it settles to the bottom. The decomposers break it down, and they suck up a lot of the oxygen that's in the water, and then that drops oxygen levels. It also leads to the poor water quality that we see, just lots of stuff. The water is highly turbid, which means there's a lot of stuff floating in it. That's why you can't see very deep into Lake Mac, and it's often brown, which is not the color that it should be.
Let's back up to the beginning. How did all of this start?
So pollution in Lake Macatawa started roughly 150 years ago when the area was first being settled.
But it sounds like a natural process. Why was it so extreme?
Slowly, as the watershed got developed, more and more water was moved to the lake a lot quicker. A lot of that drained wetlands, a lot of that moved sediment and nutrients into the lake. So kind of as the years have gone on and as we've developed the area more and more, we've gotten more and more of sediment and nutrients and other things that impact the lake negatively.
The surrounding ecosystem was also deeply affected.
It affects Lake Mac because that's often a limiting nutrient. So, I mean, it is good for the algae and for the plants, but it's not good for everything else because anything that decreases biodiversity in an ecosystem is going to be bad. And so with a few species of plants really take off, then that crowds out other things that would normally live there. And when the turbid waters come in and the low oxygen, that rules out a lot of the fish and the other aquatic organisms that can live there. So you end up getting things like catfish and some of those things that can survive in the poor water quality that end up coming in and taking over.
A lot of the wetland areas that we lost impact things like migrating birds, reptiles, amphibians, mammals that would be found in those kind of habitats. So part of it is the loss of habitat that we've had, and part of it is just the kind of degrading quality of the habitat that we still have intact.
Another concern was tourism.
People don't want to come and see a green, algae-filled lake.
This is what caused the public to take notice, and for the articles to start being published.
Project Clarity came about several years ago during a point when there was a algae bloom in Lake Macatawa. Few of the homeowners that lived on the lake decided to get this initiative started. Project Clarity was intended as a fundraising effort, and they did raise quite a few funds and have implemented other projects.
These homeowners, namely Betsy DeVos, worked with the Outdoor Discovery Center and the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council to start Project Clarity, which aims to restore the water quality of Lake Macatawa and the Macatawa watershed. So, in 2011, an 18-month study was started with the goal to discover the root source of the sediment, nutrient, and bacterial pollution of Lake Macatawa. Since its creation, Project Clarity has worked with farmers, residents, and businesses around Lake Macatawa and the watershed to change practices.
We've had a number of different wetland restoration projects that we've completed. We've put in a couple 100 acres worth of created wetlands that are helping to filter water before they reach the stream.
A lot of the farmers that I've been working with, a lot of them started out with what we call conventional tillage, where they're running tillage equipment across the fields, plowing the fields, chisel plowing fields, moldboard plows. And a lot of them are changing that practice to a no-till planting, which when we no-till plant, we leave more residue on the surface and we're not disturbing the soil surface. So that's one of the big changes. One of the others is cover crops. We've been very successful in getting the number of acres of cover crops to increase over the last several years. Part of that has been due to the wet springs that we've had. We haven't had a lot of farmers that have even planted a crop. Several thousand acres in the watershed went unplanted in 2019 and 2018. So that really led to a great opportunity for us to work with these growers to plant cover crops on these acres. The cover crops help armor the field, reduces erosion, and also helps infiltration into the soil.
A good thing for farms is a lot of the techniques that are helpful to us trying to improve the quality of the lake can also help benefit their crops, result in higher yields or less fertilizer needing to be applied, and kind of either boost their income or cut some of their costs.
But how can surrounding residents alter their habits to better benefit the lake?
We can reduce fertilizer use or make sure like the land is being tested and only adding the nutrients that are actually needed. Most of the time we don't really need phosphorus in our fertilizers, so phosphorus is the biggest culprit. So if we can reduce that specifically, that would be good.
And they have been making strides.
So we haven't had an algae bloom now in just over 5 years.
In fact, the ODC has placed signs at parks surrounding the lake and the watershed, tracking their progress and to educate the public. And as far as the future, things are looking up.
When I started doing this 2 years ago, we had 14 people, 14 farmers enrolled in our programs, and as of about a month ago, we have over 40. So we've seen a huge increase in the number of farmers participating in what we're doing. A lot of them are seeing the benefits of cover crops and no-till. They've got soils that are responding, they're holding water better than they ever have. It's allowing farmers to plant sooner, plant in a shorter window. It's also allowing them to harvest in a shorter window. And we've got farmers who are harvesting on the day like today when there's some rain out there.
Well, it's the thing that we know is that if we can reduce our impact, nature has an incredible ability to heal itself. So we can all do our part of reducing our impact. And so just being educated about that and not giving up hope and just thinking it's always going to be kind of a nasty, foul lake. It can be drastically improved, but it just takes some time. And we have to kind of get out of the way and let nature take its course.
I grew up in the area. I kind of always thought that Lake Mac was just kind of this brown lake that was always going to be brown and not ever going to be something worth taking the time or investing in. But kind of as I've worked in the area and dove into the problem a little bit better, it's something that is going to take some patience, but is something that's solvable. It's something that we as a community continue to work at and improve.
Lake Macatawa and the surrounding area is a beautiful place and deserves to be protected and preserved.
The environment and these lakes are pretty dynamic systems, and they can be fairly resilient if we give them a chance to kind of recover a little bit. So I think this is something that we're certainly very hopeful that we can continue to see improvement on over the years, and Lake Mac will be a healthy lake again in the not too distant future.